Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It is Friday night, and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anthony Agati in the rainy New York.
And I'm Lucy Liebfried in Chicago. Are you ready for another Paranormal Friday night? Thank you all for joining us tonight. We welcome all of our regular listeners and those of you who have tuned in for the very first time. If you have a question for our guest or about the topic tonight, feel free to ask us in the chat room or call into the show at 661-244-9831. Please press the number 1 so that we know that you want to speak to us. Don't forget, you can always send us an email with future topics that you'd like to see on the show, or maybe you have a story or a theory that you want to share with us on air. Our new email address is paranormal.review@aol.com. We also have our own YouTube channel where you can watch all of our previous shows. And don't forget to check us out on our Facebook show page for more information on the paranormal and upcoming shows.
So, of course, as soon as we start the show, I've got thunder, lightning, and pouring down rain starting right now. So if you lose me, you know why. Okay. Have you ever wondered if your pet is wandering around in the afterlife, continuing to share the joys as you live your life? For some pet owners who have lost their beloved pet, the grief they can feel can be the same as if it was a close relative, and sometimes even worse. The love we share with our pets never dies, and in a new book called Pets and the Afterlife by Rob Gutro, the author provides proof that our pets do communicate with us from the other side. Rob Gutro is a dog owner, dog rescue volunteer, medium, and paranormal investigator for Inspired Ghost Tracking of Maryland, and a scientist. In Rob's third book, Pets in the Afterlife, readers will learn how dogs, cats, horses, and some birds have the intelligence and ability to send signs to the living after they pass. They will take comfort in knowing our pets are around us from time to time in spirit and recognize the signs they give us. Whether you're a pet owner or not, the idea of life after death intrigues us all, and the concept that we can still connect with our beloved cat or dog from the other side is truly amazing, and I'm sure comforting for most. Let's connect with your pets in the afterlife and our awesome guest tonight, Rob Gutro. Hi, Rob. Welcome back to the show.
Hi. Thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great.
Hi, Rob. It's great to have you back on the show again. How you doing?
Thank you. Doing great. It looks like, being a meteorologist, by the way, I just have to say up front that it looks like you have great weather in Chicago, and
yes.
Anthony, I'm really sorry about your weather because you're under a flash flood warning right now.
Yes, we just got the notice.
Well, you know what, Rob? It's great to have you back. And, the last time we had you on, we talked about your book, Lessons from Talking to the Dead, which is an amazing read. And now you have this new book called Pets in the Afterlife, and it takes us on a journey into animal spirits. Now, are there any differences between a human spirit and an animal spirit?
Actually, the only difference lies in the fact that they remain animals on the other side, and then when they come back, they actually come back as animals. So we never cross that boundary. So you'll never come back as a cat, for instance.
Thank God.
Although I'd like to come back as one of my dogs because I like to treat them royally.
Yeah, I spoiled mine. But anyway, do you find more and more pet owners are trying to connect to their pets after they've passed on?
I absolutely do. This is for a lot of people that don't have children. Our pets are our children, and because they only live a short period of time, because they basically perfect unconditional love long before any humans do. It's even more traumatic for us to lose our pet. As a matter of fact, I've read some studies that said that people who have lost pets have actually grieved harder than losing relatives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
and everybody has some relatives that you certainly would grieve more over a pet.
Well, you become so attached. I mean, just like you were saying, if you don't have children, they are your children. They become part of your family. So of course, it's that natural connection that you have with another soul, another living being.
It's
yes,
difficult.
Absolutely.
It is truly difficult. Trust me, I've been through it. But Rob, you're a medium and you're a paranormal investigator. So when did you first realize that animals can become spirits?
That's a really good question. And actually it all goes back to 2005 when my first dog passed away as a puppy. He was killed by a car when I was walking him because his leash opened. And as soon as I got home, I actually had I waited for my roommate to come, and we took his little body back to the house before we transported him to the vet. As soon as I walked in the door, I heard a song on the radio about a man who lost the love of his life, but was glad he had a short period of time. It was called "The Dance" by Garth Brooks, and I knew that was a sign from Buzz. Buzz was his name, and the next song that followed was another song with the same theme. I think it was called "Monday Morning Church." My house is as empty. My soul is as empty as a Monday morning church because a man lost the love of his life. It was an Alan Jackson song back in 2005, and that was only the beginning with him, because when we got to the vet, myself and my roommate and three others were standing outside, and the lid of a trash can behind the vet building popped right off, and there was no wind, there were no animals, nothing. So and I could hear him in my head saying, "Dad, I'm still with you. It's okay. I don't want you to be sad. It was my time to go." So it was right then that I got all of these signs at the same time, and they just kept building over time. That's how I knew that pets could communicate from the other side.
Well, you've mentioned on your blog site, and obviously in your new book, Pets in the Afterlife, that animals and pets can communicate with us in the afterlife. But can animals communicate the same way as humans can, or is there more of an abstract thought form expression that's sort of created in that communication?
Well, that's a good question. And to look at that, I went and I examined how animals learn. And one of the chapters in the book, I outlined all the different ways that animals learn. And basically, if you think about it, animals learn the same way young children learn. They get to learn our language because they certainly know their name. We take them to obedience training, so they go to school. They learn how to play games. They have emotional intelligence. They can, they can tell when you're angry, when you're happy, when you're sad. They have loyalty. They like following routines. All of these things are things that we teach human children. So we also teach our pets the same kinds of things. And you may not think about it, but that's exactly what you're doing. So the only difference is that pets don't grow up and have a career and get married.
Right.
And they don't speak the language, but they understand what we're saying to them.
And I guess the story that you were just describing about the songs about Buzz, I guess in that sort of way, that's how they're communicating from the afterlife. Sort of, little signs. You're not physically, verbally talking, obviously, but it's those abstract forms that are created in the communication, I guess.
They do usually communicate with abstract forms, but they also use a number of other techniques to communicate, just as human spirits actually communicate.
Right.
Because once they're on the other side, they develop an understanding of how to better communicate, just as human spirits do. Again, they do know some words in our language, so they can tell us what their name is from the other side. And I've heard dogs give me their names. And I've actually been able to prove the names of the dogs and their connections to the owners. In the book, one of my favorite stories is about a little Chihuahua named Chico that pointed out the person he was connected to, and she was astounded when I asked her if she knew a dog named Chico. It's a little beige Chihuahua, and she said, "Yes, it was my grandmother's dog." And she said, "Well, why is this dog coming to you?" And the dog showed me that he was actually following around a black lab, and a black dog, like a medium-sized black dog. And I asked her about the black dog, and she said, "Yes, I have a black lab." And I said, "Well, has he been behaving strangely?" And she said, "As a matter of fact, he has for the last couple of weeks." And I said, "Well, Chico is telling me that he is there trying to help him become a better dog for you."
Wow.
So she was astounded. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing that you can get the name of the dog or cat from the other side as well, because they know their name.
Right. On the show, and Lucy jokes around with me a lot, I tend to go deeper in questions, so forgive me for my next couple of questions. But I've heard, and I do a lot of research for our shows, and sometimes, I just like to put it out there on the table and discuss the options, whether or not they're true or not. But I've heard that animal souls are not like a human soul, and that is that they don't possess what they call a quote-unquote individualism or individualization of a one spirit to one body. That animals have a group-like spirit in which, like, the number of animals group together to form one spirit and travel in the afterlife. I don't know if this is true, but do you believe that, or have you found anything on that in your research or in your journeys?
Actually, no. I've actually found that animals tend to come back as individual animals. So they tend not to be collective souls.
I've never heard of any living being, let alone animals, having a collective soul. I mean, I'm not even sure what that even means. But I read it somewhere, and I just thought, maybe I'll bring it up on the discussion tonight.
Can you imagine your mother-in-law and your wife's spirit coming back in another life and being the same person? That would be scary.
That's a horror show, I think, right?
Yeah, right. Well, so I try not to think about that.
There's many, many paranormal groups out there that create, and I believe we've seen it also too on television, that create this negative connotation to the experience when they witness an animal spirit. They tend to create, if they see a dog, they create this demon-like spirit character to this animal. Do you feel that's one of the biggest misconceptions in the paranormal field, that whenever an animal spirit is appearing, automatically most of the people think that there's sort of a negative or evil connotation to it?
Yeah, that's certainly irritating, because it's simply not true. I will say though that just like earthbound ghosts are negative energy, and a lot of times people stay back on Earth as a ghost because they feel like they're not worthy of crossing over into the light. They've done something bad. They're trying to atone for it. Or they have unfinished business or something. So they don't think they're worthy of crossing into the light, typically.
Right.
So I think that connotation may carry over with any earthbound animals that, as a ghost tracker or whatever would encounter an animal, they automatically think, oh, well, this is a bad animal. This is a negative animal. When animals, a lot of times an animal will stay behind out of loyalty to its master and not cross over into the light until the master crosses over into the light. Or sometimes they get, the master will cross over into the light, and the animal will get left behind. I ran into that in England when I went to visit a museum of an architect, and I went in there and I sensed the little dog running around. As it turned out, the architect's wife had a little dog, and it was her favorite. It was her favorite thing in life. This little dog named Fanny. So this little dog was still running around in the house, although I didn't sense the master or the two masters, the husband and wife. They had both crossed over, but the little dog got left behind. But so ghostly dogs or cats or horses or whatever, they're not evil, and I do think that is a misperception of ghost hunters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question.
Well, you know what, and I'm certain I'm talking from experience here. When a person loses a pet, that grief can be overwhelming. And can this emotional state cause a pet to stay close? Are we in any way preventing our pets from crossing over?
That's another good question. And the answer, I think, is no, because our pets can make a conscious decision to cross over, and oftentimes when they cross, and I can tell you a story about how our dog Sprite crossed. Our relatives on the other side are waiting to help them come over, but sometimes out of loyalty, a dog or cat will stay behind until it's our time. So we should never feel guilty about that, because it's all out of love. And that's only a good thing.
Well, okay, I knew this show was going to be rough. As a former dog owner, I know dogs have emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Just how deeply do animals feel? I mean, is it the equivalent to what we feel?
Yes, it is. I am glad you brought that up. What I have, and I explained this actually in the book. Sadly, a lot of religions in our country and in the world have taught that animals have no souls, no emotions, no personalities, anything, and that's totally false. That's totally based on superstition. There are two scientific studies that I included in the book. One is by Dr. Gregory Burns. He's a neurologist at Emory University in Atlanta. He just published a great book called How Dogs Love Us. And in that book actually dictates his study of proving that dogs have emotions. And he did that by putting a dog in an MRI, magnetic resonance imager. Have you ever had an MRI?
I have. Have
either of you?
I've never had one.
Okay, well, basically, what it does is it will scan your brain and it will read it can actually tell, what the emotions. It can tell if your emotions are registering in a certain part of the brain. I think it's a caudate. I think that's what it is. So what he did was he would take a toy. He would have the dog stay perfectly still. You have to stay perfectly still, by the way, for 90 seconds, which is pretty hard to do with a dog, unless you have an exceptionally trained dog. But he worked really hard to do that with his dog and others. And he had a complete stranger come up to them with a toy, and then he went up to his own dog with a toy. And they noticed on the MRIs that the dogs have a much greater acknowledgement, a higher level of emotion with the owner, much higher level of emotion with the pet parent than they do with a complete stranger. Mm-hmm. The conclusion that I outlined in this book is that he has proven that the same area of the brain is activated in dogs as it is in humans when they acknowledge love of a parent. You can't get much better than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of explains, when you walk home, from working all day and you come to the door and that greet that you get from your pet is, unbelievable, overwhelming, and it can only be attributed to the love that this this pet has for its master.
Absolutely. And there was actually another study done earlier this year by a group in Hungary that actually also proved the same things. So, we have science that confirms all of this stuff. And, being a meteorologist, being a scientist, this is really important to me. And also, throughout the book, I went through all the different levels of learning that a dog experiences, which are likened to the intelligence of a 3 to 4 year old human child. And Dr. Stanley Coren, who's a doctor of veterinary medicine, he's written a couple of books. One is The Intelligence of Dogs. I can't remember the name of the other one, but I reference both of those also in the book, so that people will understand how dogs learn, understand that we have scientific proof they have emotions and personalities, and those are the basic building blocks that dogs and cats need to communicate with us, just like children.
Well, Rob, was there I don't know if it was an experience that you had, or maybe it was a story that you heard about an animal spirit or having that communication. Was there anything that was sort of, that you've heard or experienced again, that was sort of overwhelming to you as proof that animals and your pets can communicate, that sort of led you in this direction to follow your heart and in everything that you do in your animal rescue and with this book and everything else? Is there anything, one story that sort of sticks out in your mind that had really sort of made an impact on you?
Well, certainly losing my Weimaraner as a puppy and the different ways he communicated really stuck out with me. But this past year, we lost our 16-and-a-half-year-old dachshund, Sprite. And that was quite an amazing story, because he actually communicated with us and our dogs, basically, in the week that he passed, with an amazing sign. He actually sent us a yellow and black butterfly 3 days after he passed. And I think it was 3 days or 2 days after he passed. And this butterfly was lingering around our other 3 dogs for a long time and landed on the grass, and the dogs didn't go after it, which is quite unusual for any dog to not go after something that's flying or a butterfly. And I knew it was Sprite. And and all summer long, this was July 8th last year that he had passed, and all summer long we had not seen any butterflies in our backyard. It wasn't until after he passed that we saw this one butterfly, and this butterfly would come back. And so I wrote about it on my personal blog, and as I wrote in the chapter about Sprite, when a friend of mine in Maryland was reading this on her iPad sitting outside, a yellow and black butterfly came and landed on her stomach. And she knew it was Sprite. Later that week, another friend of mine out in Santa Fe was reading it on her iPad, and a yellow and black butterfly landed on her. So she wrote me too. And so and what's really interesting is I've learned that with spirits there's no such thing as a coincidence, because spirits guide a lot of things to happen.
Right.
So what's interesting is it was right when they were reading about Sprite's butterfly that a yellow and black butterfly, same butterfly, same kind of butterfly, same markings, landed on them. So there's no such thing as a coincidence with spirit.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was pretty moving.
Yeah. Well, you know what? On one of our investigations, we got an EVP that sounded like a cat. Now, I've read about other experiences where the sound of a dog or a cat can be heard. Now, can these incidents be residual in nature?
Absolutely. I have found a lot of times, actually more so with horses, that they're residual. I encountered residual horses when I've gone to different historic mansions. I've seen horses outside. But yes, animals, because they do have emotions, and their emotions are very, very strong, and a lot of times animals, people may not realize this, but animals do get very emotionally attached to the houses that they live in. So they can leave an emotional imprint back on the house that they lived in. For instance, if you have a dog or a cat, and you've lived there in a place for 8 years, and then you move, your dog or cat will be traumatized until they're able to settle down, because they have an emotional attachment to the place that they first lived for a long time, just like people do.
Right.
So yes, residual energies can be found of pets.
Okay. Here comes the hard one. I lost a dear pet. I lost a dog, and his health had been failing for a while, but my ex refused to have him put down. Now, to this day, I still feel guilty about the pain and suffering that he felt before he eventually moved on. Is there some way for me to communicate how sorry I am about how things turned out, or what signs can I look for to see if he's still around, if he's still with me?
Okay. Well, first of all, you just did communicate that, and your dog knows that. Spirits connect with our energy from the other side. So, and our pets understand and forgive us for the circumstances. Once your dog passed, your dog was aware of what was happening with your ex-husband, and knew that it was beyond your ability to care for your dog. When our pets pass, the last thing they want is for us to feel guilty. So just know that you have said it, and they understand it. They totally understand what you're saying. If you want confirmation, before you go to sleep tonight, Lucy, ask your dog to come into your dream and let your dog know that you want their forgiveness, even though you already have it, but you just want to see them in your dreams. Or ask them for another sign. In the book, I outline a whole lot of signs that dogs use, from flowers to butterflies to pennies to musical signs, any kinds of things. And just be aware of what's going on around you, and your dog will give you a sign. It's just like we feel guilt over putting a dog to sleep, euthanizing a dog. I had a terrible time with Sprite. I wrestled with this for a week and a half afterward. I was an emotional train wreck, and I wrote an email to a friend of mine. And this, for everybody listening that has a pet, I highly recommend doing this. This is what I wrote about in the book. Write an email to a friend of yours and outline all the different symptoms that the dog is experiencing and what made you make the decision. Send it to your friend, and then have your friend send it back in a day or two, and read it as if you're reading it in third person. And when I read that email back from my friend, she said, "Do you see now that you made the right decision?" And I said, "Yes." Now all the guilt that came with that was taken away. So it's really important to do that. So you should not feel guilty because your dog knew that you loved your dog so much that you would do anything for him. But it was out of your hands. So please don't feel guilty anymore. It's the love that binds you right now.
Well,
I wish I was there to give you a hug.
That's one of the reasons why his ashes, I've never given them up. I mean, I still have them, and I miss them.
But see, that's even more telling to a spirit. When you think enough of them to keep their ashes, they know that you would have done anything in the world for them, and that those ashes actually sometimes act as a magnet, not in a bad way, in a good way, because it actually brings their spirit to you more often. because there's a connection with the physical. So that's an amazing tribute that you have given to your dog by taking the ashes.
Yeah, I had to. I couldn't give them up. I just couldn't. When I left, I mean, he came with me, and he's still with me. He's still here.
We have the ashes of our dogs too, and when it's my time, they're coming with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're all going to be at the same place.
Well, I'm sure that there are many listeners that are listening right now that are probably in the same shoes as Lucy and the people who are listening and have gone through that. And I think one of the questions that Lucy had mentioned was sort of like what can she look for? And I think you had mentioned a few instances, but how can we tell? How can a person in that grief-in state, because people talk about it all the time, even when family or friends pass on, they so desperately want to look for a sign and hope that their loved ones are around them. Is there anything that they can do to sort of, and maybe it's not a matter of actually looking for a sign, maybe it's the concept or the idea of just opening yourself up more? I'm not sure if that is sort of the process that people need to do, or to let things happen and not force things to happen. Is there anything that people like Lucy can do to help facilitate any kind of communication or any sign or any connection with their pets?
Absolutely. And that's in Chapter 5 of the book, I actually outline how pets tell us that they're around. And there's a whole host of ways that they do that. So, and the reason I was driven to write this book is that it was important for me to give people the understanding, the basic education and understanding of how our pets communicate and the different ways they do, so that anybody, you don't need a medium, anybody can actually start recognizing the signs left by our pets. And this book also applies to human spirits too, because human spirits do the same kinds of things. I'll give you a couple of examples. Number one, you could see appearances. You could see a visible appearance of your pet. It doesn't happen very often, but it does every now and then. I mentioned small things in nature. Spirits have the ability to manipulate small things in nature, like Sprite manipulated butterflies. My dad dropped pennies after he passed away, and I knew it was from my dad because the year on the penny was usually the year that he passed. So look for the year on and it doesn't have to be pennies. It can be any change. My partner's still looking for $20 bills from his grandmother, but she doesn't drop $20 bills. Other signs that they will use, flowers. For instance, a woman that I know that I'm connected to with the Ghost Group lost her mom, and she said, "How can I find a sign for my mom?" And her mom came to me and said, "When you see a flower, a blue flower with a yellow middle, know that I am right there when you see that flower." And she wrote me back immediately, and she said, "I just opened the sympathy card, and it was a blue flower with a yellow in the middle." And I said, "Well, know that your mom is standing behind you right there." In the book, I wrote about my friend Craig's dog, Oprah, who passed, and the week that she passed, his shrub in the front of his house bloomed in the shape of a heart. If you go on Amazon.com and you look up pets in the afterlife, the picture is on. That's one of the pictures that I downloaded there so people can see it.
Right.
People can see, people experience movement, musical signs I talked about. Sometimes you'll hear noises. You may hear nails on the floor. You may hear a collar jingle. I've talked to a lot of people who have dogs or cats, and they've heard those same kinds of noises. Have you ever heard those, Lucy? Or thought you heard them?
Now that you talk about it, mentioned it, yeah, the nails on the floor, I know I've heard that.
See, so know that your dog was trying to communicate with you and tell you that he's still around you from time to time. And they don't stay around us all the time, because they don't belong here. But they do come back to let us know. You can also get signs if you know somebody who practices Reiki. When Buzz passed away, I was put in touch with a Reiki master who actually was able to tell me things that only myself and my roommate at the time knew, which was amazing to me. So anybody who practices Reiki could help. You may experience temperature changes in your house. For instance, for any cat owners, if you suddenly feel like your ankle gets cold, that could be the spirit of your cat brushing up against your ankle. And scientifically, I'll explain why spirits are able to change temperatures, why spirits are able to cool things off. It's all about energy. When we die, we become the energy within our bodies couples with our memories, our personality, and we choose to be earthbound as a ghost or cross over and join the energies that flow through the universe or heaven or Valhalla, whatever you want to call it. In order for spirits to power up, they need energy to communicate. So fast-moving molecules of air are warm air. Slow-moving molecules of air are cold air. So if you take the energy of movement out of the fast-moving molecules of air, you slow the molecules down and you cool it off. That's why we get cold spots. We experience cold spots in the presence of a ghost or a spirit. Human or animal?
Well, one question that I just thought of. Okay, we talked about this emotional bond that pet parents have with their pets. And I've read about, like some mediums being able to pick up on living people, maybe making a connection with someone living. Now, in the case of, let's say, a pet owner has to give a pet up, but, you really don't want to, is it possible to still have a connection with that animal who is still alive, who hasn't moved over?
Absolutely, because love is basically an energy, and that love will always bind us together with whomever we love.
Okay.
So yes, you'll always have that connection.
Well, you know what? One of the best things in this book are the stories about the pet owners who have made the contact with their animals. And you've talked about your own dog. You've talked about a couple others. But is there one particular story that really just, when you heard it, just validated everything?
There are so many, actually, that there's not one particular one. Because I've actually talked to a lot of pet owners, and everyone's pet is precious to them. So whenever they tell me a story, it's very emotional to them, and it's also very emotional to me. To me, my dogs are my children because my partner and I can't have children. So every pet is a special connection to the pet parent that they have. I know that sounds like kind of a cop-out, but it really
no,
isn't, because I think my dog Sprite was a very moving story to me too, especially Sprite's passing, because when Sprite passed, he actually helped cement that our relatives are on the other side, ready to assist our dogs or cats to cross over. When we were taking Sprite to the vet for the final time, I called on my dad, who passed in 2008, and I called on our friend Ed, who passed in 1996. And I asked my dog Buzz to be in the room with us at that time. And when we were standing there, I felt a hand a cold hand on my left elbow and my right elbow as I was holding little Sprite's paw. And I looked over and I saw Buzz sitting in the corner of the room. And I knew that my dad and Ed were standing right behind me and my partner when we were saying goodbye to Sprite. And I knew that they would take him over. And that was an amazing confirmation to me that it's probably one of the most heart-wrenching things that I will ever experience. But it was a great confirmation to know that, you know, our loved ones on the other side are actually there to help our pets cross over.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, I'm getting emotional.
No.
I'm right there with you, Rob. I knew this was going to be a difficult show, especially for me and for anyone who really has lost pet, because it is such this is a being in your life that love, that bond is just so strong, so strong. And I just knew it. I knew the show was going to be rough.
Well, there are a couple of other aspects I want to address that are not relative to pet communication, but the ability for our dogs and cats to see spirits as well, ghosts and spirits. In one of the chapters of the book, I talk about how dogs and cats have the ability to see and hear spirits. And physiologically, they do have that ability, because I have learned that dogs and cats have different cones and rods in their eyes than people do. You know, our eyes are made up of different cones and rods, and they enable us to see different things. Well, the configuration in a dog's eye and a cat's eye enables them to see movement, much faster movement than humans can. I've learned that they can only see up to 75 feet clearly, but they can see a couple of 100 feet. They can see movement a couple of 100 feet, but they don't know what it is. So if you're ever walking your dog, you'll notice that your dog suddenly freezes up, even if there's a squirrel like 200 feet, or if there's a bag blowing 200 feet away, and they kind of creep up on it until they know what it is. So dogs can see movement. We might not be able to see it. Spirits move at that higher vibration, so they're able to see it. They're able to see a ghost or a spirit. It's the same thing with their hearing. You know, dogs have a much better sense of hearing. They can hear at higher frequencies than humans. And as it turns out, spirits tend to communicate at higher frequencies, which is why we have to use a digital recorder as humans to pick up something. Dogs don't need that. They have a natural ability to hear them. So for everybody listening, watch your dog or cat, listen, and see what's going on with them. If they're staring at a corner of the room, you may have, your grandmother may be here. Just pay attention to that. There's so I wrote a lot of stories in here about how dogs and cats can see them. One of my neighbors actually has 2 poodles, and they were in the room with her dad when her elderly dad passed away, and they got up and they barked, and they ran out of the room, and they ran back in the room. And she said that she knew that they were acknowledging that they saw his spirit leave his body when he died. So dogs can sense that. In another chapter, I actually wrote about taking my dog on a ghost investigation, and she helped solve the mystery.
Rob, I in addition to being a medium and a paranormal investigator, I think you're a psychic, because that was going to be my next question, literally, talking about how animals are more intuitive and have that sort of innate ability to be able to see spirits. Literally, that's my next question to you. But what did you hope to accomplish with writing this book, Pets in the Afterlife? What is your sort of vision for people who buy the book and read it? What do you hope that they get from this book?
I hope they get comfort. I hope they get the understanding of how to recognize the signs that their beloved pets are giving them to ease their mind that they are okay on the other side, and they come back from time to time. And it's the love that will always bind them to us. And that's why I wrote the book, and that's why I outlined how they learn, how they communicate, scientific evidence of their emotions and their love, and all of these stories from dog owners and cat owners about how their animals have communicated with them. So hope and comfort is why I wrote the book.
Great.
Well, one thing, Rob, another question I just thought of. Do they look the same when they get to the other side?
Oh, that's a great question. Just the same as human spirits, they actually can choose the time in their life when they were most comfortable. So, for instance, if you lose a dog that's older, for instance, 15, 16 years old, that dog may appear as 7 or 8 years old, the time in their life when they were most happy, when they were healthy, when they could run around. So they like people, they can choose how they appear when they were most happy. When my dad comes to me, my dad passed at 79 years old, but I've seen my dad like he was 35. So pets come in and out the same way.
Okay. Well, Rob, I you know what? This has been such an enlightening interview, and we want to thank you for such great insights to animals and their spirits. And I know you're a huge animal lover, and there are organizations out there that you may be affiliated with that we can donate money or our time to help. Can you let us know what some of those are?
Sure. Any organization, one of the best ways to honor your pet, and there are a couple of ways that are best to honor your pet. One is to donate to any rescue. Donate to the rescue that either is the same breed as your pet or the local animal shelter, and do it in your pet's name, or have somebody do it in your pet's name. Whoever wants to give, when your pet passes, if somebody says, "What can I do for you?" say, "Make a small donation to the local shelter in the name of my pet." That would be the greatest way to pay tribute to the memory of your pet. Another thing that our pets want from the other side is they don't want us to waste the love that we gave them when they're not here physically anymore. They want us to share that love and take care of another pet, because that love has been so important to them. That was their greatest gift when they were here in the physical plane. That's the greatest gift that you can do, is to get another pet and to give them the same kind of love and same kind of home that you gave your pet that passed. So those are the best two ways to pay tribute to your loving pet.
Excellent. Do you have any upcoming events or any promotions that you want to let our listeners know about?
Oh my gosh, I have a whole lot of upcoming events. I've been very busy. I am going to be I'm doing a number of events in Maryland. I'll be at a book festival in Bowie, Maryland, and a Greenbelt Pet Expo, both on June 7th. I'll be at the Frederick Book Festival on June 28th. I'm talking at a lot of pet stores. I'm actually one of the speakers at the Pensacola Paracon in Pensacola, Florida in August.
Oh, great.
And yeah, that's pretty incredible. I'll be at the New England Pet Expo in Boston on September 20th, and I'll be at the Washington, D.C. Pet Expo on October 25th. And I also work with a lot of I work with Dachshund and Weimaraner rescues, so I'll do events with them too, and donate portions of the proceeds of my book to the rescues wherever I go. So, and you can find all that on my blog, ghostandspiritsinsights.blogspot.com. Just a whole bunch of things.
Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much. Thank you. And everybody, for more info on Rob and to check out his upcoming events, visit his website at ghostandspiritsinsight.blogspot.com. Rob, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Well, Lucy and Anthony, thank you very much for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. And Lucy, I hope that you don't feel guilty anymore about your dog, because he certainly doesn't want you to feel that way. And Anthony, I want you to be careful going home because of the flood warnings.
I'll take out my rowboat.
There you go. Perfect.
Thank you, Rob, and good luck with the book, Pets in the Afterlife. And again, if you guys want to check out more about Rob, it's ghostandspiritsinsights.blogspot.com to check out his upcoming events. And check out that Pensacola Paracon that he's going to be at. So thank you, Rob, so much. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank
you
Rob.
both. You too. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Wow. But before we get into a little bit of a review, I just want to let everybody know that there's some info that I found online in regards to pets in the afterlife that I wanted to share with everybody. And it may be surprising to some people. It's not going to be another shocking article that I found that'll blow everybody away, but it may surprise you, and I'll just leave it at that. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But I know, Lucy, you've been emotional this whole show. Are you feeling a little bit better now after talking to Rob and sort of, realizing that, yes, our pets are still around us, and to not feel guilty anymore?
Yeah, I feel better, but it doesn't make it any easier. My dog, he's been gone for a while, but, it's that connection that you have with them that you never lose it. I mean, for someone that doesn't have an animal, it's hard to explain to somebody. It is really part of your family. They become another member of the family, and that connection is just so strong. And they do have personalities. I mean, my dog was a character. I mean, he was just cool. And that's one of the things. I mean, I miss him. I really do miss him. I mean, he was my dog. And I've always had dogs. I mean, growing up, my dad got me a German Shepherd after I got bit, so I wouldn't be scared. But this dog, and that's what we called him. We called him Dog, D-O-G-G. And he was just the coolest dog ever. And when he passed, I never really thought about it until it actually happened. And then when it did happen, it just devastated me. And I'll tell you, to this day, I miss him. I really miss him. He was
How old were you? How old were you when he passed?
Oh God, I was grown already. I mean, I had already been divorced. Jesse was grown. I mean, he was. I don't know. At that time in my life, this dog was just cool. I mean, you know how I say everything happens for a reason. This dog was in my life at that time. He was my buddy. He was my partner. He would listen. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for getting so emotional.
No,
I
that's
knew
okay.
this was going to happen.
Well, I did want to open up the phone lines to people. You're welcome, everyone who's listening live right now, you're welcome to call into the show at 661-244-9831. And if you want to share maybe some of your stories, if you've had a pet that has passed on and maybe, you've got some, really, really heartwarming or really inspiring or surprising stories that you want to share, that you still have communication with them, feel free to call in, 661-244-9831, as we continue the discussion on pets in the afterlife. It's funny that you brought up that question to Rob about having a pet that you've given up and still having that connection, of not knowing, because I had a pet when I was younger, probably in my early teens, that we had for maybe, I'd say 5-6 years. Wasn't very long. But, we all grew a close connection to this dog. And it's funny enough because I know you like Pomeranians. We had a Pomeranian, a white Pomeranian dog. So we called him Rocky. That was his name. Could you just imagine this little Pomeranian dog called Rocky?
Aww.
But until this day, I don't even know exactly why my parents gave him up. It wasn't that, this little dog didn't really do anything, really. It wasn't, hurtful towards anyone. But maybe it was just something that, my family couldn't manage at the time with 3 kids. So, and that's not an excuse. Anyway, but, till this day, I still think about the dog. I still, wonder, I'm positive, he's passed on. But I've always wondered whatever happened to him, if, it's kind of silly to say, but, does he still remember me or us,
Mm-hmm.
So it was funny that you mentioned that, because I was thinking that too as we were doing the show and doing some research and putting the questions together, that I started to think about, whatever happened to Rocky.
Well, I asked it only because I had to do the same thing. I had to leave a dog. When I left, I could not bring the dog with me because I couldn't keep in an apartment. This was an Australian cattle dog, and Pumpkin, I still worry about her. I think about her. I wonder the same things. Does she remember me? When I first left, it crossed my mind to drive past the house just so I could see the dog. But then I thought, okay, then that's too cruel. But I've always been curious about, that connection. Do they remember us? Do they still, think about us? I know how hard it felt and how hurtful it was to leave her. Did she feel the same way? All of a sudden, Mommy's gone. She's not coming back. And that's exactly how, that's exactly how you think of it. It's like she was my baby. I was her mommy, and that was the reasoning behind the question, because it's like I still think about her, I miss her. I miss my dogs. I really do. Which explains my obsession with Boo.
Yeah, right. But, and some people who are probably either listening now or I'm sure you've seen it, anywhere in life, either, in person or on the internet or whatever. People make light of the situation and don't really put any thought into, a pet passing. And they always say to folks, oh, it was just your dog, move on. Yeah, it's over, whatever. But, if you really think about it, a dog or a cat or a bird or hamster, whatever pet that you have, they've shared unconditional love with you. You've had this best friend, this family member for X amount of years in your life that, has never talked back, has never given you any grief, has never, hung out late at night and come home at 3 a.m. and made you go crazy. It's never been that way. It's always been an unconditional love. And that's all that they know. They know you as the master. They know you as the parent, and continue to give you the love because you feed them, you give them water, give them milk, whatever it is, and you also give them the love and the attention. And they give it back to you. And so it creates that stronger bond, you can say, that you would have with a pet than with, another human being because of that nature, I think, because of that unconditional love that they give. And therefore that bond is much stronger. And so when that bond is broken, of course, it's going to create that huge devastation in your life. It's going to create that loss that is even deeper than if, your Aunt Tina just passed away. It's different. It's different. It's not that it's on a higher level or anything like that, but I think to a person who's a pet owner, it's a much different experience. And if you're not a pet owner, it's hard for people to understand that reason.
Mhm. Well, one thing I do have to say, they do talk back. They do. That goes into the personality. That goes into, because they're individuals. They have this personality. My pumpkin, she Australian cattle dogs are probably one of the most intelligent breeds there are. This dog would hurt us. I mean, and I know it was a natural instinct for cattle dogs, but she would literally try to herd us back and forth. She would talk back. She had definite, she had a personality. She was stubborn, but she was amazing. So that's one of the things I think people who don't own pets understand, that this small being with 4 legs and fur has a personality. They have their own little quirks, and that's why no 2 dogs will ever be alike, because they each have their own individual personalities. They have their own tendencies. The breed itself might have, specific things that they're known for, but the individual dog has the personality traits only that dog will have.
Oh, sure. And the whole debate also, too, that people have is whether or not an animal has a soul. And, I don't know if it's, I can't put a percentage on it, but I would guesstimate that 50% of people think that dogs don't have souls. And I think it's just because of the mentality that, it's sort of, in the hierarchy chain. They're above them, and so obviously they don't feel as though that there are souls within animals. But they do. I believe so. And that soul creates that personality. That's the distinguishing mark that each and every one of us has. Whether you're a human or an animal, that's who you are. That's the true essence of a living thing. And, people may laugh, but I even think, plant life has a soul. It's a living thing, anything that is living that has and we got this into discussion before about even plants having a consciousness. How do they know to go to the sun? I know you're shaking your head and you're looking at me crazy.
I know. I'm only doing that because I'm so doomed. I kill all my plants. I'm doomed.
Maybe that's the spirits that you have roaming around in your house right now. Spirits of your previous fern plant.
My dead plants.
Yeah, exactly. But and so I don't know. This topic is very personal. It is very different, and it's funny too because you find, and I've found, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, Lucy, but many paranormal investigators are involved with animal rescue shelters or doing a lot of stuff for charity for animals and pets. I notice that a lot, and I guess it sort of relates to the fact that animals don't have a voice, and and speaking of trying to get that voice heard, as a paranormal investigator, you want voices to be heard. That's why you investigate. That's why you try and get evidence, because you want these spirits, human or not, want their voices to be heard. And I guess it sort of goes along with the dog rescue and the animal shelter volunteerism that a lot of paranormal investigators get into. It's, again, getting that voice to be heard. And I don't know. I just, I'm trying to connect all of it together, and that sort of popped into my head while putting the show together.
I think you pinpointed it right then and there. I mean, when you're investigating, you're looking, well, I can only speak for myself, you're looking to give that person on the other side a voice. It's the same thing with animals. Animals don't have a voice. Animals need us to step in and stand up for them. So I think you pinpointed it exactly. Do you want me to get into what I had found online? Yes, because you wouldn't tell me.
No, I like to surprise Lucy on air with a bunch of things. It makes it interesting. So, and actually, it just came to me right before coming on air tonight. look this up. And I tend to, if you know me well, and if you've heard me speak on the show before, I don't like to get into the religious debate when you talk about the paranormal and about spirits and about the afterlife. I really don't like to do that because it's such a huge, widening platform that you can get lost in if you concentrate solely on what beliefs and what religions talk about with the afterlife. And it's so conflicting that you won't be able to see the answers that you're truly trying to go after. So I tend to, and this is what I personally tend to do, is just leave the faith and beliefs out of it. If it's something that helps you along the way, great, but I don't want to have what the beliefs are in many of the faiths out there and religions to interfere with your perception and your understanding of the paranormal. And so, in any case, I thought it would be interesting to find out what religions and what the faiths out there think of animals and pets, or basically just animals and the afterlife. Do they believe that animals have a soul and move on into the afterlife, or is it just close up shop, we're done? So I found an article on WordPress.com, and it was Good Grief Pet Losses blog, and it was an interesting article that he or she, because I don't know who did it, he or she talks about, and they actually went to and talked to and interviewed people of many different faiths and what they believed in as far as animal afterlife or pets in the afterlife. So I want to play a little fun game with you, Lucy. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different faiths that this person spoke in person to the people who are within that faith or within that faith-based religion. And I'm going to say the religion and ask you whether or not they believe that animals either go to heaven or go into the afterlife, and I'll tell you what the real answer is. Okay. Protestant. What do they say about animals in the afterlife?
I don't know. I'm going to say that they say no.
Well, you'd be right, because it's actually not a definitive no, but there's no biblical grounds. There's no verses. There's nothing within the Protestant religion that talks about animals in the afterlife. The idea is that they hope that animals are able to be brought into the afterlife with their owners, but there's nothing indicating whether or not they have a soul or whether or not they go into the afterlife. So that was pretty interesting. Okay. Catholic.
Okay. From my personal experience, I'm going to say no. And the only reason why, and I need to put a disclaimer behind that, the only reason why I'm saying that is because in all of the years of being in Catholic school and listening to nuns and everything, the talk never really ever, I don't think I ever heard anyone mention anything about animals. It was always about the human spirit. It was always about the human soul. And, if you saw animals, they were just kind of like decorations on the side. That's kind of like how it was. But I don't ever remember a true discussion on whether or not an animal would go to heaven. I don't remember that, so I'm going to say no.
Well, this is an interesting find that I found with the Catholic religion. St. Francis of Assisi had said that, animals are God's creatures. You know the Noah's Ark story, and pretty much they revered animals or any living being or any living thing as God's creature. So you would think that every living thing would go to heaven in the Catholic religion, but traditionally the Catholic Church teaches that that animals do not go to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go to heaven, and that was pretty shocking for me.
No, I mean, if you paid attention when you were in school, if you went to Catholic school, it really didn't. It was never, there was St. Francis, and he's the patron saint of. It's almost like, the animals are a beautiful thing. They're God's creation. But it's almost like I said, it felt like they were like decorations. They were scenery. They were things that, yes, God made them, just like trees and that. And that's another one. We never even talked about, whether or not, like you said, plants and trees and do they have souls? Do they have a being, a consciousness?
Okay. Muslim.
I'm going to say no.
Is that based on anything, or is that just a guess?
I'm just going to say no.
Well, technically you're right. They don't automatically go into whatever it is, the afterlife. But in the Muslim religion, the Quran states that anything that a living being wishes for to have in the afterlife, they will get and they will receive. So if you were to pass on and your wish is to have your pets with you, then your pets will go with you. But if you do not request that, then they do not go on. You are pretty much sort of the master of what happens in the afterlife in your world of the afterlife. So technically no, but they can go to heaven if you've requested it. And that's what the Quran says.
So an animal can be in heaven, but he's not going to go there of his own accord. Someone has to bring him.
Right.
And again, he would be like a comfort. He would be like the same thing as a blankie,
But again, here's the repeated notion within all of these faiths already that animals are sort of the lesser being. I mean, I get the whole thing. I get it all, and the time frame and all of that when this came about. I get and understand why they would feel that way, but it just seems sort of like a repetitive notion that animals are lesser, that humans are higher, and regardless of whether or not the belief is that there are souls within every living thing, even though you're an animal and you're not a human being, you're of a lesser level and plane, that you don't have that privilege to go on your own.
Well, even today, I mean, there's quite a lot. There's a lot of people that truly believe that animals are lesser beings.
Right. Okay, Judaism.
I'm going to say yes.
Well, you would be wrong.
Okay.
No. They specifically say that Judaism specifically does not designate, again, and it does not implicate the talk of animals, going on after they have passed on. So it sort of leaves it up to interpretation, or it leaves it up to, again, a guess whether or not it happens in Judaism. But it specifically is not stated anywhere that it says that animals will go on as humans do.
Now, see, that was based on not knowing anything about the Jewish religion. I mean, that is one of the mysteries in my life. I don't know anything about it. And I guess now I'm thinking I got to start researching just to learn to see what it's about.
All right, well, I'm sure you know this one, the American Indian.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to say why?
Because their spirits are the same as ours. I mean, they exist. They have purpose.
There was the person that that the article author interviewed was Gary Langston of Kansas City in northern Cherokee. And Gary Langston says, all living things are children of the earth. He said, it doesn't matter if we have feet or wings or roots. So yes, there is an afterlife for animals.
Mhm.
And see, there you go. He says roots. So there you go, the plant life.
Oh, God. My plants are dead.
They're haunting you right now. Okay. Hindu.
Yes.
You believe that they move on to another plane, an afterlife, heaven, or
yes.
whatever.
Yes.
According to this article, and according to the Hinduism, no, they do not. Animals will only go into the afterlife. Their soul will only pass on if they've been reincarnated back into a human.
Okay, so what's the and see, forgive my ignorance, but the sacred cows, don't they have something like that in the Hindu religion?
I know Noah is in chat. He may get
Noah,
that.
you have the answer?
Again, I'm not familiar with Hinduism or with Buddhism, but according to this article, the general Hindu belief is that animals have souls, but there's no access to eternal life. I think it says here. I'm not even going to read this. But if anybody's in chat right now, if it's Noah talking about Hinduism and animal afterlife, if you want to answer that, maybe we can get back to it. I'm going to move on to the last one that I have.
That one surprised me, though.
Okay.
The Hinduism.
And the last one is Buddhism.
Well, you just said no.
Hinduism, I said no.
Oh.
Buddhism.
I'm going to say yes.
Well, and Noah can correct me if I'm wrong, but according to this article, again, there really isn't any specific talk about animals or even any afterlife, because the concentration with Buddhism is making your current life more peaceful and generous for everyone. Mm-hmm. It's instilling the power within your existing life and not worrying about what happens after or what's out there or what's later on. But Buddhism teaches that the animal realm is a lower realm of existence. Again, it's sort of that underlying theme with a lot of these faith-based religions.
That animals are a lower being.
Correct. I thought it was just interesting just to go through this and understand what the religions are talking about when it comes to the afterlife for animals, and it just seems as though that there's this again underlying theme that animals are lesser, except for the American Indian. That animals are lesser, that they are not on the same level, and whether it is of your request or not, or there's no real, black and white indication that animals go into the afterlife or go into eternal life, that without your, I guess, nudge or push, that it won't happen. So it's kind of interesting.
So now I want to ask you, okay? You said that you believe animals have souls, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So do you believe that they go to the afterlife? Do you believe they go to a heaven? And have you always believed this?
Yes, I do believe that animals do go into the afterlife. I definitely do believe that. I'm sure at some point early in my life, I maybe because I never really thought of it, or put any effort into explaining it, but I definitely do think that animals do go on to the afterlife. And even tonight when Rob was talking about horses, and he was saying, how horses, it definitely that there's proof, and he had talked about some stories about that. it's kind of, and I'll be honest, it was kind of weird hearing that. Horses, I mean, you just don't think horses go into the afterlife. You don't think cheetahs go into the afterlife, or elephants are in the afterlife. You just don't think it. But, all living things have souls. That's what, again, makes you, your personality. It makes the person who you are. It's the energy that all living beings have. And so obviously when this carcass dies off, this, hard body dies off, that energy has to go somewhere. It has to be somewhere, either within the earthbound realm or within the afterlife, but it does exist. It goes into the same areas. I can't say for certain, because I'm not 100% sure whether or not we're on the same dimension or level where we go, because that's up to the universe to decide. And how it delineates it, but I believe that they do move on, that there is something. And I don't believe the question that I had mentioned to Rob about this collective soul, that animals have to band you up together. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I got to find out where I got that from. But, sort of group together in order to create one soul. It's like, your dog only had, a 1/3% of a soul. I think that's ridiculous. I don't know where that came from, but.
Well, now see, I totally forgot what I was going to ask you. But, I don't know, I forgot. I had a question. It was like,
Okay. Was it about the afterlife and animals and horses and elephants that I was talking about, or on a different plane and different level than we are?
No, it was more like about the belief and the fact, when we've done investigating, the first time that we got, when we went to Ghost Town and we got the EVP of the cat, or, we heard the noise of the cat, it was just kind of surprising to me, because I had never really thought about, animals as being spirits. But that one sound kind of opened up a door to start thinking about this. And I mean,
is that when you realized that animals have a spirit and move on?
I always felt they had a soul, but it was the first. And in my mind, I thought that when they left. They went on to the other side. They didn't hang around. And the first time I heard the EVP, it was like, okay, wait a minute. So some of them do remain. Why would an animal remain? It's not like they have their intelligence is way lower. So they don't have the ability to hold grudges or the reasons why a human spirit might stay are a little bit more complex than I think that an animal could have. So what reasoning would a poor animal stay here? And I think Rob illustrated that.
What is a grudge? What is a grudge? What is it? What category does the feeling of a grudge fall under?
Let's say, the father in a family passes on. Okay, maybe he believes that a brother or a cousin or somebody had business dealings with him or something, and he feels that he was wronged and never got that, I'm sorry, you were right, never had closure on the situation. To me, that, in my mind, that person would be more likely to remain here.
What is that feeling called, though? What is happy? What is sad? What is depressed? No.
It's angry.
What does it all fall under? What is happy? What is sad?
They're emotions.
Exactly. And animals have emotions. So their emotional attachment, as Rob was talking about, to a location or to their parent, to their pet owner, that can keep them around.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same feeling. It's the same emotion. It's that same energy is what I'm trying to get at, I guess. It's the same energy that someone who has a grudge because they've had bad, working relationship with, and something had happened and they're angry, they want to come back and, resolve whatever it was. An animal, a dog or a cat or a horse, could still feel that because they either are missing their pet owner or feel sad that they have left and they cannot be there anymore, and so they want to come back. It's the same. I think it's the same feeling.
Okay. So what you're saying is for us to hear that cat in the basement of Poston Elementary School, that it's not residual because that cat was just always would run through this area, that it's an emotional connection?
No, it could have been residual. That's the whole thing with any kind of, it's the same thing, and Rob even said it too. Animals can be residual, or they can be, if you want to say it, intelligent spirits. That it's either or. It's the same as a human. It's the same as any other living being. They can have that energy being repeated over and over again, or it could be that that cat may have had some emotional connection with someone on the land or within the building or with the area, and it's just moseying along as we were there investigating. No?
And I believe all that. That's not to say that I don't believe it. It's just that hearing that EVP to me was the first time that I really thought about it at all. And I think maybe that stems from being raised Catholic and being told, never told whether or not an animal moves on or that. And that's really weird for me because as much as I love my dogs, I never really thought about them being a spirit. It just never, and with the Native American stuff, yes, animals become spirit. But for some reason, I always thought that my animals would just move on. I never thought that they would.
Maybe they did. Why are you thinking that they haven't?
I don't know. This whole subject really just freaked me out. This was a rough one.
I know, but I'm not being hard on you. I was just asking, how do you know whether or not they haven't moved on? Maybe the reason why you're still feeling guilt is because you haven't really had a connection. There wasn't a sign.
Right. Yeah.
And so maybe they maybe have moved on. But you did say you've heard, nails on the floor and
I've heard nails on the floor. So I've lost more than one dog, so it could be It could be another one. I'm reading the chat too. Are you going to answer?
No. I'm pulling someone in right now. No, are you there?
How would you know it's me?
How do I know it's you? I don't know. I'm psychic.
How are you guys doing?
Good. What's going on?
No, you guys are raising a lot of really, really good questions. And when you're talking about different worldviews of the afterlife with animals, I think it's hard to really pinpoint it. You guys were talking about the EVP of the cat. And if you guys have an experience with it, you can speak more intelligently to that than most of us because, we can hypothesize about it. One thought I had when you guys mentioned Buddhism has so many different. It depends on the school of thought. For example, in Kathmandu, their brand of Buddhism is a mixture of several ancient religions and Hinduism, and so in Kathmandu, dogs are thought of as the lowest life form, and so if you're reborn a dog in Kathmandu, that's supposed to be you were the worst person alive. So they actually have pets and they beat them simply because they were a bad person. So I guess my thought is, if somebody believes in reincarnation, is that, well, actually, no, I don't want to go there. If we believe in a heaven and a hell, that's one thing. But if we believe in a more Buddhist or more Native American, and Lucy, if I'm not speaking correctly, let me know. But if we think of a more, we kind of join the oversoul, the flow, the ground of being, what have you. We're all part of that oneness. Whether you're a human being or an animal, I think that we all share in that same experience of the afterlife, and we can communicate with people from the other side in whatever way, is possible at that time. Am I making sense or babbling?
Yeah, no, you're making sense.
I think I'm still a little confused on the Buddhism belief. Do they actually, and I know you said that there's many different levels, and again, forgive me because I'm completely not familiar with anything Buddhist at all. But is there a belief that animals do have a soul and do move on or have eternal life?
Thank you. Good. You've brought up the question that I was just saying to Ryan a few minutes ago, my partner. In Zen Buddhism, which is a big part of Japanese culture, they ask, it's a riddle, and the riddle doesn't have a right or wrong answer, but the riddle is meant to trigger somebody to break out of their human mind into their, what they call the big sky mind. And one of those riddles, called a koan, K-O-A-N, is, has a dog Buddha nature? And typically, most Zen Buddhists would agree that a dog has Buddha nature, an eternal self, an immutable self, just like a human being, which means they're on the same level as humans, not a lower life form, which is so different compared to Kathmandu, where they're seeing them as somebody reincarnated that was a bad person, so they beat the crap out of them and punished the dog.
Why such contrasting views? No, it makes sense, but why such contrasting views?
It's amazing. Just like with Christianity, I mean, you have so many denominations. With Buddhism, you're going to have so many conflicting views as well. Yeah. But if you want to go with pure Buddhism, Zen would probably be the oldest because it was grounded in a text written prior to the Buddha's life. That's the foundation of Zen. And it's actually Zen actually comes from Hinduism, which elevates the animals, as you guys know. If people follow Shiva, if they follow Krishna, they won't eat cows. Cows are sacred. They're, a family.
There you go.
And then when it comes to people that worship Rama or Ram, like George Harrison, he was a big proponent of Ram, and Mahatma Gandhi too. They worship the monkey god Hanuman. So you have monkeys and cows running rampant in India because they hold them as sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that most religions out there, most faith-based religions out there, consider animals to be on a lower level and do not cross over?
In my experience, I would say most do, especially the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because all of them contain a creation story that basically says that humans were, quote, created with dominion over animals, and animals are kind of like a urinal. They're there for our use and serve other purpose. But what they're not saying, that the more evolved Buddhist schools see, is that there's more to animals in their moral shell. And like everyone they've had stories in the chat room and with you guys talking about connections with your different pets. It's amazing that, when you're attached to, say, a cat or a dog, they know when you're sad, they know when you're sick. There's certain things they don't know. And I have to say, I saw one not impressive, it was like an astounding story maybe 5 years ago. A woman had a pot-bellied pig as a pet. And if you guys have heard this, I apologize for retelling it, but when people say pigs aren't pets, the woman went into cardiac arrest. And this pig actually ran 5 blocks from her home, laid down in the street to stop traffic. And people thought, why is there a pig in the road? They kept going around. Finally, one person stopped. When they got out, they followed the pig back to the woman's house, and it saved the woman's life. If that is proof that, animals have a level of consciousness that we don't get just because we can't communicate with them directly in this realm, I don't know what is. I mean, that story made my hair stand up. It was so weird and interesting, and it really changed the way I thought about animals.
Yeah, I mean, even just recently, it's been all over the news, and most definitely, I believe, on the Internet as well, about the cat attacking the dog that was attacking the 4-year-old boy. And it was an amazing video. You see the cat sort of jump right onto the dog. Dog runs away and saves the little boy. It's just, I don't know if it's frightening or not, but it boggles my mind that the whole idea of, and I don't know, I may sound idiotic right now, but the idea of religions and believing that every living thing has been created by a higher power, why and how was it ever created? And I really don't want to get into a religious debate right now, but how is it that we've created or something has created this hierarchy where, you can, but you can't, and that can, but that can't have an eternal life if everything has been created by the one,
I agree wholeheartedly, and Lucy, again, can speak to the Native American side of this, but I think those are completely fabrications of humanity, because we look back at ancient cultures again, I'm not attacking, I'm just stating fact, pre-Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, animals were held in very, very high regard and as sacred. Right. And so I think that, the same thing happens in those specific major influences in our world culture. The same belief systems were used to repress women and different races and different groups.
Mm-hmm.
If you think back to the Egyptians, long before other religions.
I know, I was just going to say that. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Yeah, like the cats. I mean, they mummified in Chicago, Lucy. I've been to the museums and saw the mummified cats, and I thought that is so interesting that they thought so highly of their cats, and they domesticated cats and made them part of our. They made it so they're part of our lives. In Anubis, the god of the underworld with the jackal face, when people embalmed, when they started embalming and mummifying people, they used the actual priests wore the mask of the jackal to honor the jackals, because the jackals typically ate the dead that were left on the streets and didn't have any means. But they honored them, and those are just two. You have if you look at all their whole pantheon of gods, a lot of them are animal based. And I have to say one more thing. In Hinduism, even, along with celebrating and honoring monkeys like Lord Hanuman, honoring and celebrating cows like Nandi the bull with Krishna. There's also Ganesha, and he's one of the oldest Hindu gods. And you have to ask yourself culturally, well, why would they, build a worship around elephants? And if you think about that part of the world, if you're trying to picture what's the strongest thing, what's the most powerful thing, but the most gentle thing that we can imagine, and so they deified the elephant long before anyone else did. And Ganesha or Ganesh still is a very prominent Hindu god today. Even people that don't know much about Hinduism, they know who he is.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what
came
to my mind while you were talking about, Ganesh and the elephant. That's one of the things with Native Americans. It's those traits, the traits of the wolf, the traits of the bear. It's those traits that animal has is kind of like what makes them who they are, and it makes them eternal. It makes them part of that spirit world. These are the things that, as a human, as a simple human, you want to emulate, to have the bravery of a bear. You want to have the warrior spirit of a wolf. So that's how I can totally see how animals can be placed in such high regard. But the other part about that I thought about when you were talking too, I think with the Abrahamic religion, I think a lot of it revolves around the fact, like you said, we can't communicate. We don't understand. We can't have a dialogue with them. And unfortunately, that carries over to human beings. How many times have I seen, because a person doesn't speak the same language, they get treated differently, or they're looked at as they're not as intelligent. I mean, it's a nasty thing that we as human beings do, and I think this might be behind the animals.
That's a really good insight, Lucy, because absolutely, if you look at different comedy shows, as much as we find humor in it, even like on Mad TV when they had Miss Swan, even though she was Asian, she spoke English, which I'm not bilingual, so believe me, if I spoke another language, they'd laugh at me. But her broken English is a sense of humor for people. So absolutely, I see what you're saying. The inability to communicate in the same way kind of gives us a sense of superiority, which has nothing to do with intelligence. It just has to do with being able to communicate it back and forth, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. I as anybody who comes onto the show, you're subject to questions that we have. So I have one question for you, Noah, and you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But have you experienced having a pet and losing that pet?
Yes, several times in my life, and ironically, it was harder than I thought, because I was raised, in the Christian church, and we're taught this is our pet, and we didn't have that belief that they would really live on. But you made me think back to when I was a little boy. I found a toad in my backyard when I lived in Pontiac, Michigan, and my cousin Charlie, he was a little bit mean, and I had this toad for a long time, and I let it out one summer, and Charlie stomped on it and killed it right in front of me.
Oh.
It was so cruel and horrible, and it really broke my heart as a 4-year-old. But my mom asked me, she said, well, what do you want to do with Toad? Because I couldn't think of an original name. She said, why don't we go ahead and bury him? And when we did, she made me find a rock for his tombstone. And she told me recently, she said, you gave me this little rock, Noah, and on it you wanted to say, Dear Toad, I loved you, I've always loved you, and I'll see you in heaven someday. But with a crayon and a tiny rock, all she could do was write scribbles, and at that time I couldn't read, so it made sense to me. But even before my religious training as a kid, I knew that life was precious. And I knew that there was something about it. And again, just like with spirits or anything paranormal, supernatural, metaphysical, I think we get untrained to see certain things. And so as a kid, I knew that. As an adult, it's been different. I haven't had a pet in a long time, but it is harder than most people think when you lose one.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, for someone who isn't a pet owner, you can always say that it's something that, and again, we say this all the time, you have to really have the experience in order to believe it or to understand it. And so if you're not a pet owner, you may not understand, what everybody's been talking about tonight and the feelings that you have and the emotions that overcome you when when your beloved pet passes on. It is a traumatic experience, and so that was one of the reasons why we sort of wanted to do the show tonight, was to talk about it. It's something that many people really, I think, don't think about, or don't want to bring up and talk about. But when you talk about the paranormal and you talk about the spirits and the afterlife, you have to include all living things, all living beings. And with that same notion, as we believe, and I would assume most others and other, paranormal enthusiasts and investigators out there believe that everything does have a soul. And so, what happens to an animal when they pass on? Do they go into the afterlife? Is there a difference? And that was the basis for the show tonight. So I hope we accomplished it. I hope we were able to get through all of the different areas. And, Noah, I always love when you come on the show to bring a more in-depth insight to a lot of things, because I think you and I are sort of on that same level. We think a little bit deeper than most. And, Lucy always gives me that crazy eye whenever I start that type of conversation.
You like because you listen to them.
Lucy is our mother figure. She reels us in when we're out of line.
Exactly. But I think it needs to be pushed. I feel as though all the topics that we talk about, need to be pushed further. I just have this feeling that a lot of the topics that people talk about within the paranormal, it's sort of stagnant. It's even though our show is called Paranormal Review, I feel as though everybody's just reviewing a lot of the things that are going on, and just validating a lot of the experience that they have, which is great. I encourage that. But I think a lot of us need to push the envelope a little bit more, and maybe ask the questions or think about the topics. And if you think it's a crazy thought, don't think that. Go through with it, research it more, and read into it more, because you never know where it's going to end up and lead you. But I feel as though we need to push the topic even more, and that's why I sort of brought up the whole religion thing and tying that into it, and getting a little bit deeper in some of the conversation interview with Rob to I don't know, just to go a little bit further into that whole idea of, okay, animals, where do they go? What happens? What do they actually possess a soul? And what is it like? Do they communicate the same way? And how does that happen? How does it or not finding the actual answer, but what are the theories out there as to how that happens? And so I tend to go that route. But I love when we have you on, Noah, because you sort of validate my craziness.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys by not doing the status quo, the same tired topics. You try to bring in new stuff and get people to think critically about seemingly offbeat things, which is kind of a misnomer in paranormal discussions. But
right.
Going over the same tired things isn't, I don't think, productive, and that's why I've been so drawn to your show and have continued to be a fan, because you guys really get into some stuff that most people don't take the time to do, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you letting me be on the line. I'm not going to stay any longer, but thank you guys again for everything.
Well, thank you, Noah, for coming on. We got to do another show, Lucy, with Noah again. We have to,
we have to find a topic.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got plenty.
Noah said, honestly.
We can do a Noah night.
Yeah. But Noah, honestly, seriously, send us an email and let us know, when you want to come on and what you want to talk about, and we'll set it up. Sounds good. Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great holiday weekend. You too, Noah. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, did we go into it a little too much? Did we go further than we wanted to go, or are we good?
No, I think we're good. I mean, I think we brought up points that I don't think a lot of people think about. I know I didn't. And the only thing I can think about now is if I see the ghost of a rat in one of these locations now, I'm going to
the ghost of a rat or an actual rat?
Well, see, that's the thing. Is it going to be an actual rat, or is it going to be the ghost of a rat?
I don't know. I'm not squeamish. I mean, we've been to some really dank and dirty places. For God's sakes, we've actually been eaten alive by chiggers at Fort Mifflin. Literally, it was just like, thousands of these things just eating us alive.
Yeah, it was the first time that I heard bullfrogs, and that was, to me, that was freaky.
I like this topic, pets in the afterlife, and I do want to thank Rob Gutro for coming on. He's always a great guest. And his book, Pets in the Afterlife, I think you can go to his website and order it. I think it's on Amazon. I didn't even check to see if it was on Amazon.
It's on ebook. You can get it on Kindle.
Okay. So, I do recommend it. If you are a pet lover and maybe you've recently lost your pet and are going through the sort of grief stage right now and trying to make sense of it all or looking for that rub on the back and that help and that comfort and that help to get through these next few days or hours or even minutes, I would highly recommend picking it up because he gives great insight. He does give some tips, as he talked about tonight, about keeping that connection and searching for that connection with your pet in the afterlife, what to look out for. But he also has a bunch of stories in there from other pet owners and what they've gone through and the experiences that they've had after their beloved pets have passed on. And so maybe that'll sort of help you through those things and help you understand this whole concept of animals and where they go and give you a good feeling and make it a little bit better, a little bit easier for you.
Well, you know what, too, what I thought about, too, as a paranormal investigator, it's an interesting read. It'll expand your thoughts about what you're experiencing, what you're coming in contact with. Maybe you have come in contact with a ghost animal. It just gives you a little bit more insight, and it's just a great read, really.
It is, and one more thing though, before we end the show though, I do want to say that one of the questions that we had asked Rob was about that negative connotation that many paranormal investigators have when they come in contact or experience an animal spirit at a location. 9 times out of 10, most of them say or create that negativity around that animal. Try not to think that way. I don't want to stand up here and lecture anyone, obviously, because it's just me who should listen to me anyway. But, have an open mind about what that experience was just. Don't just, have in the mind that I just heard a dog growl, that it is something evil and nasty. It could simply just be a dog that is returning because of whatever reason, and is still around in the afterlife and roaming that location that you're at. So try not to combat it. Don't try and fight it. Understand it first before you react. Try and understand it before there's anything negative that's put on it. And who knows what that'll turn out to be. Lucy's just staring at me.
No, I agree totally. I mean, it is. I mean, if you come into contact with something like that, because the one thing that popped in my head was the black dog, and I believe there's some. What did I read? Something about people say that you see a black dog, it's evil, it's a demon. Just stop claiming everything is a demon right away, people. Come on.
All right, that's another show we'll get into. All right, why did you get on to the rest of the show?
Okay, let's go to the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week, it is Cow Eye of Vancouver, British Columbia. And I know I butchered that. I'm so sorry, dear. But her likes, she likes Stevie Nicks, Eddie Vedder, Robert Downey Jr., Amy Bruni, Jeff Belanger, Carl Sagan, quantum physics, and, of course, she likes Paranormal Review Radio. Thank you so much for being a fan. Thank you for becoming a friend. She really is so cool, and she's reached out to me on several occasions on different things, and I'm just so honored that you are a fan of the show.
Yeah, don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio fan of the week, all you got to do is just like us on Facebook at Paranormal Review Radio.
Okay. As humans, we tend to think of the afterlife and spirits as only other humans. Well, not all of us feel this is the way. It is the concept that most people have. We keep animals as pets. We love them, and we bond with them to the point where they become part of our families, our companions. They even become our children. With this in mind, we have discovered that they don't always move on. Just like humans, they sometimes remain on this plane for some reason. Losing a pet is a very hard thing to go through, but we hope that tonight's show has given all of us who've lost a loving pet some hope that they're in a better place and that someday we will see them again. We want to thank Rob Gutro for joining us tonight. This was a very, very special conversation. So, our search for answers as to what awaits us on the other side takes many forms. There are vast numbers of teams and individuals with so many different styles and techniques. Sometimes it's difficult to understand how they work. Michael J. Baker produced a full-length film called 14 Degrees, a paranormal documentary. He spent years of extensive research to document and participate in dozens of paranormal investigations, as well as interview and learn from some of the most respected names in the paranormal field. He's worked with, instructed, and consulted dozens of paranormal teams and investigators across the U.S., and he's become a nationally recognized authority on paranormal technology, evidence analysis, and scientific investigation techniques. Michael will be joining us next Friday night to talk about paranormal investigation techniques that we all should know. Please join us for an informative and scientific look at this field that we all love. Thank you, everyone, for spending yet another Friday night with us. We're so glad you're here. Thank you, Anthony, for everything you do. So, until next week, dear friends, never stop believing and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Have a great Paranormal Day weekend. Good night.
Paranormal